Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first speaker series presented by the UN Pre-PT Society. So thank you all for joining today. We have our wonderful guest here, Anthony Pinto de Costa. He is a registered PT and went to Queens for school, and he's going to tell you a bit about his physio journey. All right.
Appreciate the intro. Yeah, I'll share my screen here.
Sure.
Give me 2 seconds. There we go. You guys see my screen okay?
Yes.
Good? Okay, perfect. Okay, yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate you guys, obviously reaching out to me. It's a huge honor for me that, you guys thought of me to do this presentation. Anytime I can help out young and budding physiotherapists that, want to come into this field, I'm always down. I'm always game to do that. So yeah, today basically I'm just going to be telling you guys, my journey to becoming a physiotherapist and just, kind of the road I took. Everybody's road's going to look different. So, some of the things here, you can take it all with like a grain of salt. You can take some things that you like, some things that you don't like, and just kind of sift through it like that. But I'll kind of tell you how I went about doing that in my whole journey. So for the outline for today, I'll first just give you guys a little bit of introduction of who I am. I'll talk about my educational journey. I'll talk about why I chose PT. That's a common question that I get a lot, and everyone's answer is going to be different, of course. I'll tell you guys how I got in, the road that I took, like I mentioned. I'll tell you a little bit about how PT school was, and then I'll talk about my career, kind of the jobs that I'm working now, and how I kind of got into them, what I do at them, the differences and similarities between them, all that good stuff. And then, of course, we'll leave a little bit of room for Q&A, which I think will be obviously very helpful for you guys, because I know as PT applicants, always got a lot of questions. I know I did. So, these questions need some answers. So I'm happy to do that for you. So yeah, just to start, very briefly, who am I? So like you guys mentioned, I'm Anthony Pinto de Costa. I'm a registered physiotherapist, of course. I was born in Toronto, but I was actually, I grew up in Georgetown, Ontario. If you guys know where that is, it's kind of like, 45-ish minutes west of Toronto. Just a small town out there. So definitely grew some roots out there. Growing up, and obviously even to this day, I've always had a passion for health, fitness, and longevity. It's always been part of my fabric, part of my framework, especially growing up playing multiple sports. And, eventually when I did my kinesiology degree, that passion just continued to grow and blossom. And then it just absolutely boomed once I became a physiotherapist. And, it's super cool that I get to help people with this stuff every single day. Just outside the clinic, just a little bit about me as well. My favorite shows, top three are definitely The Office. Nobody can beat Michael Scott. That guy's number one. Fresh Prince, one of the classics, and then Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So I'm definitely a big comedy guy. And then lastly here, I like all sports, but definitely basketball is my number one. I'm a huge basketball junkie. I'll watch any game you put in front of me. I definitely love to delve into, and I definitely love to play as well. Yeah, it's just a little bit about me. I know you guys know about this. For those of you who don't, in my second year of physio school, I started a YouTube channel and Instagram page called the Canadian Physio Students, at CDN Physio Student on Instagram. And essentially the reason why I created this is because I was in your spot not too long ago. And I remember looking through the internet, there's definitely a lot more resources out there now, but back when I was applying once upon a time, like I applied in 2017, I was just like rummaging through the internet, and I could find nothing about, how to become a good applicant for PT school, the components of the application, what I should do to kind of set myself apart from some of the other people in the pool. And yeah, it was just a frustrating experience, right? I got as much information as I could, but there were from some forums, like I'm sure you guys have seen like those pre-med 101 forums. Like I was on those things like 24/7. And they're helpful a little bit for sure, but you always got to take everything with a grain of salt there, because it's just people, like random people who are writing some stuff in there that may not actually have any like backing to them. but just I think it was always good to have or I wanted there to be like more credible sources out there. So when I got into physio school, I knew I could be that for people who are trying to get in. So that's why I just went full throttle with it. I just put a camera in front of my face, and I started just recording videos that shows like the day in the life of a physio student, because I had no idea what that looked like, and I wanted to show people just a glimpse of that, because I find that to be obviously very helpful for people who want to get in. And then just other things like part of the application components, as you guys can see on the screen here, the CAP interview, which is part of University of Toronto's physio program. I got a student on to talk a little bit about that so that they can give insight onto that. And, a bunch of other things that are part of the application cycle. I just wanted to get that out to people so that, we can answer some of those common questions and concerns that I had, and that students will have for many years to come. So that's why I wanted to start this, and it's been great ever since, for sure. And I want to continue doing that. But anyways, part of my journey here is obviously a lot of education to become a physio. It's a long road. So after high school, I actually ended up going to Western University. I completed my Bachelor of Arts in Kinesiology there. And then, like I was saying earlier, this is what really made my passion for health, fitness, longevity, being able to physically function well throughout your life. It definitely helped it grow. And then after that, I was fortunate enough to get into physio school pretty much right away. So I went right into physio school right after that degree, and spent 2 years at Queen's University, which was absolutely amazing experience. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And I graduated just 2 years ago. Can't even believe it's been 2 years. As you guys can probably relate to, the pandemic makes everything feel very accelerated. Like I just look back and I'm like, wow, 2019 was like, how was that 2 years ago? It feels like it was just yesterday. So been in practice ever since, and it's been great. So I'll talk a little bit about my career after, like I mentioned in the outline. But now let's move into kind of the reasons why I chose PT, like what drove me to it, right? And I think just starting with an anecdote, definitely, as you guys can see here on the screen, this is my Nonna Rosa. This is a strong Italian woman. She's 90 years old right now, still with us as we speak. And back when I was a kid, this is not the main reason why I chose physio, but this is kind of what put me on physio. Okay, I think everybody kind of has like similar story to this, somewhere along these lines. But so my nonna here, she has rheumatoid arthritis. She's had it for about 25, 30 years. I think just before I was born, she was diagnosed. And I growing up always saw she was always in some type of pain, right? But I remember there was one time when I was a kid, a physiotherapist came to the home. It was a home therapist, and started doing some exercise with her, right? So some exercise to help with like increasing like her shoulder flexion range of motion. She was just doing like wall crawls on the wall, up and down, some other things as well. But I remember just being intrigued by it, right? I didn't know what was going on because I was a young kid, but I remember just being intrigued, and I thought it was super cool. And I saw the benefit that she got from it. And I always just kind of planted that in the back of my mind. Like I said, I was very young, so I wasn't even thinking about career at that point, but it's something that always stuck with me. Okay. Eventually this came back, but what I learned throughout the years was like, as I started to develop as a person, there was a bunch of different reasons why I ended up choosing PT. And the main reasons are on this screen right here. So, I think PT it's one of those things, like a lot of people don't grow up like wanting to be a PT from like the time that they were like, I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4 years old. Like, I think it's something that you kind of arrive at. And that was definitely it for me. If you are one of those people who's always wanted to be one, like that's not to offend you or anything. I just think like just discussing with classmates and even having a bunch of colleagues, like everybody always kind of describes it as something that they arrived at, right? So number one, these are in no particular order, but these are just the multiple reasons why I chose PT. But one is definitely, I've learned that I'm a people person, right? I always like to be around people, always like to converse with people. I don't like being alone, basically, right? Like I like to be around my family, friends, Of course, I always like my little bit of alone time, but for the most part, I like to be around people, just being social. And uh, as you guys, if you've volunteered in physio clinics, you guys know you have to be like a very, very social person because you're talking with people all day, all hours of the day, and you just got to be with it with your personality there for sure. So after volunteering, I found that this my personality would definitely fit well with being a physiotherapist. Um, Number two here was, which this is definitely one of the biggest factors. I'm able to apply academic areas of interest to real life, right? So when I was when I was going into grade 12, up into that year, I'm telling you, I'm not lying with you guys. I wanted to be like a history teacher or do something with law, like history and law. Like those were like my main subjects. Bio was kind of like a hobby. I thought it was like cool, but never would have thought I would have done something with it. And then in grade 12, I took that exercise science class, and that just like did me in. Like I thought it was so cool. Within a month of taking that, I was like, I don't know what I want to do, but I know I want to do something with this. Like whatever it is, I want to do something with this because I know that if I had a passion for this, it would make my career, that much more rewarding, and I wouldn't have to wake up every day and be like, I got to go to my job, right? I could feel excited about going to my job because I get to apply some of these things like anatomy, physiology, and once I started learning that I really like this stuff. I obviously started applying to kinesiology programs. And then I thought back to that experience that I was telling you about with my nonna, right? I was like, oh, yeah, that was a physiotherapist. Like, yeah, they have to know all this other stuff. Maybe let's look into that a little bit. And then once I started looking into that and seeing what physios do on a day-to-day basis, I was like, it's a lock for me. It's a lock for me for sure. Number three here is, I love sports. Like grew up playing basketball, football, volleyball, soccer, multi-sport athlete for many years, and I know how much sport did for me as my development growing up. Just being in a team environment, being athletic, just being out there all the time with like in a team environment. And when I was playing sports, I always saw that, there was always some kids that were injured, right? And I always saw that whole process of them, being sidelined, and then having to go through that whole rehabilitation process, but then coming back and, being better than ever. I thought that was super cool. And I know their physio had a huge role to play in that. So I wanted to be able to help people in that position get back to sport because I knew how much sport meant for me when I was growing up. And I saw that physios were able to do that every single day. So I was like, again, just more reason for me to be a physio. Last two reasons here. Obviously, I yearn to help others, right? It's just part of my fabric, part of my framework. It's definitely how I was brought up. My parents are always super helpful to everybody. Always give them the shirt off their back, and always put other people before them, and that kind of bled into me and my DNA. And this is all aspects of life for sure, but like going back up to number two, being able to apply those academic areas of interest to real life in order to help others, that's just a double whammy for me. And I knew that physio would allow me to do that. And then lastly here, lifestyle, you always got to consider this when you're choosing a career as well. Physios live a pretty good life. You don't have to, like, for example, if you're like a doctor, you don't have to like go be on call and have to go in and like 3 a.m. to do like an operation on somebody like that. You basically work your hours, and you make pretty good money doing it, and you get to live a pretty comfortable life. So physio is definitely a good option in that regard. And then last thing attached to that too is I knew very quickly I did not want to sit at a desk for my job. I need to be up. I need to be active because I just go crazy if I'm staying in one spot for too long. And seeing physios, we're on our feet all day, and it was just a perfect match for me. So those are kind of like those 5 reasons in conjunction with my whole Nunda experience that definitely pushed me to become a physio. We're all still good, guys. Falling okay. I'm not going too fast or anything like that.
All good.
All good. Okay, perfect. So now, how did I get in? right? This is another question I get a lot, especially through the DMs on Canadian Physio Student. So I'll kind of give you guys my pathway. So there's a bunch of different aspects of what made me a viable candidate, and I'll go through them all one by one. So first one is definitely just having a multitude of diverse PT related and non PT related experiences. There's no way around this. Definitely got to have that. Even if you guys see, on school websites, it says like, experience isn't essentially required for applying to that school. Still read it as if it's required, because you always want to go, like, you never want to choose a career that you don't have any type of experience in, right? It would kind of be a poor decision, be a poor choice, because it's a huge commitment to become a physio, or any career for that matter in the medical field. So you want to make sure that you're well informed before that, and I'll talk a bit about that. Number two here was building meaningful connections. Definitely did that over the course of my undergrad career. Studying both smart and hard. I think there's got to be a balance of both of those. Planning ahead, just being ahead of the ball, is definitely a big component as well. And then last two here is I learned about the PT profession through a bunch of different resources, and I had an absolutely great support system as I went through my whole pre-PT journey, which I'll talk to you guys about. So let's go through some of the experiences that I had, so that you guys can kind of see what my blueprint looked like. And then, you guys can muster up your own as you go throughout your undergrad years. So my first ever exposure to PT, besides my nonna, was going into a private clinic. This was in my hometown in Georgetown. It's called Generations Physiotherapy Center. And I basically one day just walked into this clinic. I had my resume in hand. I went up to the front desk. I said, "Hey, can I speak to a physio that works here?" And luckily at the time, he didn't have a client. So he came in, he talked to me, and he's like, "Yeah, why do you want to work here? Like, what are your whole intentions with everything?" And I just told it straight to him, like, this, I really want to learn more about this profession. I want to help out as much as I can here, just so I can get that exposure and see if this career is right for me. And yeah, the guy took me on. He had me in there 2 times a week, few hours at a time. And I basically helped out with not prescribing exercises, but teaching prescribed exercises as prescribed from the physio. I also helped out with setting up modalities. So the TENS machine, giving hot packs, cold packs, ultrasound, all of that. And this was a great first exposure to physio. The guy who I volunteered with, still keep in touch with him today. Definitely a big connection that I had, which I'll mention in a bit. And this was a great first start. And I knew once I did this, I was like, yeah, this is definitely what I want to do. But I knew I needed a little bit more exposure, because there's so many avenues of physio, right? So that kind of brings me to my next experience here. So a couple years of doing private practice, I moved on to look at what physios do in hospitals, right? Because I knew physios worked in hospitals, didn't really know what they did. People don't speak too much about that. When, if you talk to any of your parents, I'd say most of your parents, and you just mentioned a physio, they would think about a physio in a private practice clinic, right? That's what the general population knows us about, right? Even now, when I talk to my patients and tell them that I work in a hospital as well, they're like, "Oh, what do you do in the hospital?" I'm like, "I'm a physio," right? They're like, "Oh, I didn't even know physios were there." I'm like, "Yeah, like, we're there, but it just looks a little different," right? So yeah, I wanted to get some exposure in the hospital. So Western, I was really fortunate to get into their work study program in one of the summers that I was there. And I got a position as a rehab assistant in a rehab hospital called Parkwood Institute. And I got to work on the neurotrauma rehabilitation unit. And I worked with spinal cord injury patients using these devices that you see on your screen here. These are called functional electrical stimulation ergometers. So um, depending on level of spinal cord injury, where the lesion is at within the spinal cord, um, most of these spinal cord patients aren't going to have voluntary control of their legs. So it's hard to kind of see in this picture, but on the top of the quads there, and then the bottom of the hamstrings there, you guys can see there's kind of like electrodes there. And essentially what these electrodes do is they activate those muscles that they don't have voluntary control of, and allows them to move in a cyclical motion on that bike so that these spinal cord injury patients can get some exercise in, which I thought was super cool. I got to set these machines up, work with a lot of spinal cord injury patients, and hear their stories, which, a lot of them are very, it's difficult to hear, like sometimes when you ask, once you get comfortable with some of these patients, they open up to you to tell you about their story. Like it's definitely brings some tears to their eyes. So it's definitely an experience that I'm grateful for, but I've definitely felt bad for some of these people in these positions, because some of them were just kind of like just like car accidents that were out of their control. But I was happy to be able to help these people out. It was definitely a rewarding experience. So that was my first hospital experience. After that, same work study program, same hospital. This is actually Parkwood Institute here. One thing I wanted to gain more exposure in as well is research. Part of being a physiotherapist is being an evidence-based practitioner. So you really want to gain a good grasp on the research process. And you obviously get a little bit about that in, research methods or statistics course that you take throughout your undergrad. But I wanted to be part of a project. I really wanted to see what did it look like from the ground up. And I was fortunate enough to snag this position as a data collector for the spinal cord injury research team. And essentially what I did is I sifted through many patient files to look at outcome measures that are specific to spinal cord injury patients. And essentially I just typed in some numbers and data into a spreadsheet. Definitely wasn't the most exhilarating experience, but learned a lot from it to understand the whole research process and how everybody kind of works in a team to create these papers that you guys see when you go on like PubMed. So that was a good experience for me as well. And then lastly, from my PT related experiences, this was by far my favorite experience. Like I said, I was an athlete growing up, love working with athletes, know how much or how important it was to my development. And I got to snag a position as student athletic therapist for the Western's men's varsity basketball team for the 2016-2017 season. In this picture, I'm up there in the top left corner. Yeah, this was great. I got to work with these athletes for a whole season. It was about, I think, 6 or 7 month season, which was good. Lots of exposure, saw some injuries, which obviously is unfortunate for the athletes, but for me as somebody who's learning and being able to assess, diagnose, and treat these athletes was a great experience and something that definitely helped prepare me for physio school. And a lot of the skills that I learned during this experience still help me out today. So this one was absolutely gold experience for me. And yeah, even looking back now, it's nice to see these pictures and just kind of look back on some of the work you put in to get to that point. Now let's talk a little bit of the non-PT related experiences that I had. So non-PT related, I think, are super important as well for just your personal development. I think personal development is going to be super crucial for your professional development as well. Because like I said, when you're in a clinic, it's not just about being able to diagnose, treat, and provide a plan of management for somebody. You also just have to be, like I said, a people person, somebody that someone wants to be around, wants to talk to, and someone that people think that you can empathize for them, basically, right? And these non-PT related experiences definitely did that for me. So one experience that I had was becoming a Western Health Science Orientation Week leader. So I was basically assigned a bunch of first year students, and I was basically like their guiding light throughout first year, right? Anything that they needed with regards to how to study for exams, how to keep on top of their work, how to basically ingratiate themselves within the Western community. I was kind of that guy for them, right? And there's a bunch of these, we call them softs at Western. I'll just say Orientation Week leader here. But there was a bunch of them in a team, and it was just an absolutely great experience. Definitely helped me, basically educate and help lead somebody who's in a vulnerable position to a point where they feel confident eventually. And that is what you do every single day in a physio clinic. So there's a lot of transferable skills from there. The next thing I did, which is definitely a unique experience for me, was I was a multi-sport coach for athletes with dwarfism. So the guy on the bench beside me here is one of my best friends, Ethan, grew up with him. His brother actually has dwarfism, and every year they would go to these dwarf Olympics, basically. And I was like, what is this, man? Like, I want to come to one of these, you know? And there was one year, it was in, where was it? It was somewhere in Anaheim, California. And he's like, yeah, man, if you want to come, like, you can come and help and coach, and we can go and do it together. And I was like, man, I'm in. So we went, and great experience. And I think the biggest takeaway that I got from this was understanding how to work with people who have these physical challenges and disabilities, right? Because when you're in a physio clinic, you can see anybody from any walk of life, right? So understanding how to work with these multiple populations was huge for me, and like I said, still transferable to what I do today. So this was definitely a great experience for me, and something that I think was really helpful on my physio school application, because it was something that was unique and something that would help me stand out. Last couple ones here, to help with my teaching skills, presentation skills, education skills, which is what you have to use when you're speaking with patients every day. I was a lecturer for the Concussion Legacy Foundation at Western for a few years. So I'd go to high schools and basically teach kids in phys ed classes what a concussion is, how to recognize a concussion, and what you should do if you or one of your teammates or friends gets a concussion. As a physio now, I treat a lot of people with concussions. It's well within our scope of practice. So again, these things that I didn't think I would use that much in my career ended up coming back full circle. So these experiences were super important in my development. And then lastly, from my experiences, this logo you see on the side is called the Victorian Order of Nurses. They're just an organization that has a bunch of volunteer experiences. I would definitely look into them if you guys are looking for some volunteer experiences, because I know they're everywhere. But for one of their senior fitness classes at a local retirement home, I was a senior fitness instructor assistant. So I got to help these seniors with exercise modifications and just ensuring that, the exercise that they're doing doesn't hurt them, isn't too like it doesn't exert them too much, things like that, and just trying to find like an optimal dose for them, which as a physio today, that's my bread and butter, right? That we are experts in exercise prescription. So I started honing those skills a little bit early, which was great. But yeah, that does it for my experiences. Are we all still good here, guys? Not going too fast? We're still okay? I can't see.
Yep, everything's good.
We're good. Okay, perfect. So the next thing I think was super important for me was building meaningful connections. So one thing I definitely suggest you guys do is just converse with as many people in the field as possible. Like, you guys can reach out to me anytime, reach out to any of the people that you volunteered with or want to volunteer with in the future. Just get as much information as possible, pick their brains, because that's super important. Get to know your professors. That's something that I definitely didn't do until my third year. I wish I would have got it done earlier. Second year, I kind of started getting on it, but not as much as third and fourth year. I really started talking with profs and just started having that confidence to go up and, spring up a conversation, because these connections that you make, they will help you so much in the future, and they'll continue to help you long in the future, longer than you would have thought. But yeah, these connections, basically, when it comes to the reference letter component of the application, was absolutely huge, because the more you get to know these people that you make connections with, the better reference letters they're going to write you. The quality of them is just going to be key, right? Because you can get a reference letter, that's great, but if the quality of that reference letter isn't that good, then it may not do as much for you. But if a person really knows you, they are going to go all out on that reference letter for you, and the committees will see that. So definitely understand that. Okay. So my academic reference letter, there was a professor that I took 2 courses with. I did really well in his classes. I always went to go see him at office hours. I would obviously talk about material within the course, but I would also just talk about other things that, we had specific interests in, which was just like, working out or sports, things like that, right? Just develop some type of relationship outside of the academic realm as well, because that will certainly help you. And then my professional reference letter was from a physiotherapist from the first experience that I talked about here. Still a guy that I talk to today, definitely a huge mentor for me, and he wrote a pretty good reference letter for me as well. So definitely build those connections. Studying smart and hard. So in my first year, like I wasn't, definitely wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. I think my average in first year was like a 73, and I knew that wasn't going to cut it for physio school. So I definitely had to start developing better study habits. But I think in second year, I was studying like hard, like I was studying really hard, but it still wasn't getting me to where I needed to get to. So I realized by third and fourth year, I got to study smart as well. So I'll talk a little bit about that. But one thing I want you guys to know, which you probably already do if you've looked into requirements, having a strong GPA is just absolutely essential to becoming a competitive PT school applicant. And the highest, most recently published GPA cutoff for PT schools in Canada just this past application cycle was a 3.83 out of 4, which that is the highest it's been. The year that I applied, I think it was a 3.82. So, slightly higher, but we see where the trend is going. So if you guys don't know how to calculate GPA, definitely check out my video on how to calculate GPA, and you'll understand, how high of a GPA that actually is. And it will really put things into perspective for you. But back to the studying hard and studying smart. So what I started doing for the studying hard part is I would definitely go back and review lecture material most nights for pretty much all of my classes. Not going too hard, but just looking at it, making sure that I got it in my head, so that when I do look at it just before the test, a few days before the test, it's not like it's the first time I'm looking at it, right? So that's part of the studying hard component. And then after that, I started using more active recall strategies as my main study method, right? That was my studying smart component. So I used to make cue cards like basically like a stack bigger than a loaf of bread. I would just be, just stacking them up throughout the semester. And then by the time I got to the exams, like I just had my own little exams that I would go through, and I would study it with one of my friends. Her name's Nicole. She's actually a physiotherapist as well. We got into physio school at the same time, and we would just bang out cue cards before exams. That's the study method that worked for me. I know it doesn't work for everybody, but make sure you guys got a balance of both, and try and get those grades as high as possible. The next thing is planning ahead. So like I said, I was on those forums 24/7. I was always looking at what the requirements are to make sure that when I got to my application, I was not like deer in the headlights. I don't know what I got to do. By the time I was applying, I knew what was required of me. So it was a little bit more of an easier process for me, right? So look into the reference letter requirements. Look into if a school requires a personal statement. So that's basically your letter of intent explaining why you want to be a physio. Look into interview requirements. There's multiple different interviews. There's the CAP at U of T. There's the Cura Talent at McMaster. There's an MMI across multiple programs across the country as well. So look into that for sure. Grade point average, like I talked about, every school is going to have different GPA cutoffs. Look to see what those are, to see what you're aiming for. Okay. And then work and volunteer experience. Make sure that you guys got a good serving of those, and understand what types of work and volunteer experiences schools need, right? You guys got to know all this stuff, because if you don't know what you're aiming for, you're going to miss every time. So really make sure that you got a good grasp on that, and make a plan for sure. And then learning about the PT profession, absolutely huge, right? PT schools want to admit people who have made an informed career decision, right? There's a lot of people who just kind of apply to PT school because they're like, yeah, I think it's something that I'd want to do, or like it's, maybe a backup plan. People or the committee can definitely see right through these things. So you really want to make sure that you're well informed. Okay. So I basically learned about the PT profession through three different things. My experience, like I told you guys about as already, connections, like I said, just picking people's brains, talking to as many people as possible. And then the last thing, which I think is super important and something that all of us could do right after this call if you needed to, self-directed research, right? So look on the web, look at some of the resources that are out there. There's some good resources on physiotherapy. Not the best for getting into physio school, I would say, but just learning about the actual profession is definitely key because, like I said, they can see right through these things. And I put this screenshot of the competency profile for physiotherapists in Canada. If you guys haven't heard about this document, definitely do a quick Google search on this. This is a good start, I think, about learning more about the profession so that you can stay well informed on what physiotherapy is, kind of the different branches of physio, what's expected of physiotherapists in Canada. It's a great foundational document. I recommend this to everybody. And then lastly, like I mentioned before, just having a great support system, that was huge for me. I think when you look at some of the stats for getting into physio school, the odds are definitely against you. When you see the amount of people who apply versus actually get in, it's definitely an experience just realizing the reality of that. And I think throughout my years in undergrad, like there were times that I definitely doubted myself, right? I think everybody has an element of that, but just having really good friends around me, great family, great support system as a whole. These people kind of motivated me and let me know, like, you got this, man. Like this is what you're about. This is what you're super passionate about. And people are eventually going to see this one day. Your hard work's all going to pay off. So keep going with it. Right. Because, you guys are probably experiencing it right now. 4 years of undergrad, it's a long time. And all the work that you do throughout those 4 years basically will come down to, getting that acceptance letter or not. So you don't see the fruits of your labor until you get that reference letter in the mail, right? So you're just working and working and working, but you're not getting that reward. And when you don't see those rewards coming to you, even after all that time, it can get very laborious, right? So just having those people around you to keep you motivated was key. And then to finally get that acceptance letter, like there's no better feeling. It's no better feeling. So yeah, that's that part. Let's kind of move into how PT school was for me. And I'm gonna keep this short because I kind of want you guys to, if you guys have questions about this, definitely ask. But I'm gonna define PT school for me in basically 4 words. Okay. So busy for sure, definitely super busy. When you start PT school, it just kind of hits you all at once, right? Because they want to see, are you cut out for this, right? They really want to give you all that, like all that they have, like the faculty. When I say they, I mean the faculty. They want to give you all that they have so that they can see if you can endure it all, right? Because like I said, it's a big commitment to become a physio, and they want to see the people who are actually in it because they want to be in it and they're super passionate about it versus those who aren't. So, a full course load in undergrad, like you guys know, it's 5 courses throughout a semester. And that's what I was used to. I always took a full course load. And then when I got to physio school, I look at first semester's schedule, I had 7 courses. I'm like, what the heck? Like, I'm not used to this at all, right? And everything's so compressed, and they're throwing a bunch of things at you at once. A lot of the stuff is new. You always got exams, you got labs, you got practical exams. Like they throw a lot at you. So it's super, super busy. And that kind of transitions into the next word there, which is it can be stressful at times. I would say most times it can be stressful because you're no longer, I'll put it like this, you're no longer studying to get, 85, 90, right? Like if you're aiming for that, that's all good. But I think it's stressful because you're studying to actually know the stuff for your future patients. And that's stressful in and of itself because you want to make sure that you're going to be good at the job in the future. because people won't come to you if you're not good, right? People are going to call it out. So you want to make sure that you're always on your P's and Q's and you know what you're talking about, because eventually you're going to be out there all on your own. So you got to make sure that you're definitely keeping on top of things and definitely developing into a good therapist. So that was the stressful part about physio school for sure. And then I'm going to end off on two positives here. Physio school was fun. One of the one of the best 2 years of my life for sure. You guys see these people on the screen here. These are some of my greatest friends. These are lifelong connections, people that I keep in touch with and talk to almost every day. A couple of them in this picture that you see here, I'm going to go see them tonight, actually, after this, just because, we always like to be around each other, talk about how our careers are going, and just have fun together, right? And as busy and stressful as physio school is, you still always have that element of, or still have that time to have fun with your classmates, right? Because for example, once everyone's done an exam, once you're done an exam, everyone else is on the same schedule as you and they're done an exam. So, maybe you can go out that night, maybe you can do something fun, right? And everybody does it all together. So physio school was great for that for sure. And then lastly, rewarding, right? Like I mentioned, once you actually learn those skills, see all the fruits of your labor come to fruition, and you're actually a practicing physiotherapist, you can look back and be like, wow, all that hard work, all those cue cards I made, all those nights that I couldn't go out because I had to study for a test or do a project and whatnot, all that stress that built up, it was actually worth it, and I got the rewards from that. So that's how I kind of define PT school. Now, lastly, guys, here to wrap up, I know I'm doing okay with time here. I'll talk to you guys about my career. So kind of where I went as soon as I graduated. So I have a few jobs. We'll kind of go through them one by one so you guys can understand the differences and similarities between them. And then we'll go from there. So I work in private practice. I'm a physiotherapist at Leaps and Bounds Performance Rehabilitation, which is where I'm at right now. And private practice, basically, I see anybody with any type of orthopedic condition, people that range from pediatrics to geriatrics, athletes, anyone in between. You're a regular everyday desk worker. I mainly see people with, a lot of low back pain, especially these days with a lot of people working remote from home, neck pain, shoulder pain, pretty much anything, right? And absolutely love it. It's great. Private practice is great, but I also like hospital, which is why I work a couple days in hospital as well, which I'll talk about. But I kind of outline my schedule here just so you guys can get a sense of, how many hours I work and what my days look like. So I'm here at the clinic Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. Wednesdays and Fridays, 1 to 7, and Saturdays, 8 to 2. So I work those 6 hours. And that's the great thing about working in private practice. Like I can work less hours, but still make a good living because of kind of the practice structure and how much you get, paid per patient. It's a pretty generous amount, and I don't have to put in those 8 hours. I could, but 6 hours I think is pretty good. It's pretty comfortable for me. So that's private practice. And then I also work at the hospital. I work on the surgery unit at Credit Valley Hospital, which is in Mississauga, if you guys know where that is. And that's part of the Trillium Health Partners organization. And here I work on the kind of the opposite days of private practice. I work Tuesdays and Thursdays. And anytime you work in the hospital as a physiotherapist, you work those regular hospital hours. I work 8:30 to 4:30. Okay. So it's an 8-hour day. It's jam packed with, seeing a decent amount of patients, and it's definitely a fast pace. But physio looks a lot different in the hospital than it does in private practice. Like I said, you guys probably know the private practice realm, what that kind of looks like. And then in the hospital, it's kind of a little bit of a gray area. So as you guys can see, this picture here was taken on Christmas. One of my favorite pictures, but you guys probably see, there's a stethoscope around, like one of my colleagues there, she's holding a stethoscope. You see the stethoscope around my neck there too. And a lot of people don't know that physios use stethoscopes, right? So A lot of the people that I see, the patient populations, are people after thoracic and abdominal surgery. And if you guys can imagine, after you have a big surgery like that, you're going to have some issues going on with your cardiorespiratory system, right? So as physios, we definitely examine heart sounds and breath sounds as well, which is why we use that stethoscope, just to make sure that everything's on the straight arrow path for our patients. And we also help them from a mobility standpoint. So the people that I see in the hospital are people like very low function, right? A lot of them are frail older adults that just had this big surgery. And a lot of them, quite frankly, can't even get out of bed without assistance. So that's where our role comes in. There's times where we have to deal with pretty heavy transfers, like getting somebody from a lying position to a sitting position, and then even walking. Sometimes people only walk a couple meters and they're done for that session, right? So it's a little bit more of a slower paced treatment session because you're working on the basics with people, but eventually our goal is to help get them back to that baseline level of function so that they can eventually return home, or maybe they need to be sent to a different unit to do more rehab, so that they can get strong and better before they go home. That kind of makes sense. But I know you guys may have some questions about that. Happy to answer that, but that's kind of like that in a nutshell. And then lastly here, this is my third job. It's not like, I say third because I'm not here that often, but I also work for Halton Healthcare, which is a 3-hospital system in the area: Georgetown, Milton, and Oakville hospitals. And I'm a casual physiotherapist there, as you can see on the bottom left hand of your screen. So basically what that means is, picture me as like a supply teacher. If there's a physio there who actually works at one of these hospitals who needs a shift covered, I can go in and cover it. But I'm not obligated to cover it, right? So a lot of times I get a text, "Hey Anthony, you think you can take my shift next Friday? I'm hoping to take a bit of a longer weekend. Let me know." And I can give them a yes or no, right? I don't have to take that shift. So like I said, scarcely I'm here, right? Maybe I'll take 1 to 2 shifts a month, but the work that I do here, it's very mixed, right? Because I could be on any type of unit. I can cover a patient on, or I can cover a physiotherapist on the stroke rehab unit. I could go to the ICU, which I did a few months into COVID, which that was an experience for sure. I could go on another surgery unit, complex care unit. There's a bunch of different things. So you really have to be adaptable and kind of adjust to the demands of the unit, so that you can, be an effective therapist there. So being a casual, it's a good experience to get a lot of different exposure to different populations. And, that's why I kind of keep it around. Keeps things interesting for me for sure. So, yeah, guys, that's it for kind of my career, my path, this whole presentation. I know you guys will probably have some questions, so definitely happy to take them. You guys see my camera right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It was super informational. We got a lot of great tips, and I'm sure it'll help us with our application and our future PT careers. So thank you very much again for joining us.
Sure.
And yeah, if anyone has questions, don't be afraid to pop up, either unmute yourself in the chat or turn on your camera, and Anthony will be able to answer. I don't know how much time you have after. If you're free, maybe 15 minutes after, we can kind of extend it, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm good. You guys are
okay.
good.
Perfect. Awesome. All right.
Ask away. Don't be shy. Even if it's like, those questions that a lot of people are sometimes nervous to ask, just like even about the career, by all means, guys, like I had all the same questions. So I'm an open book.
I can start off with one here.
Yeah.
So kind of like, once you graduated physio school and started working, I'm just kind of curious, do you still like find ways to kind of continue your education as the field kind of further develops?
Yeah, great question, Nate. So there's like a culture in physio where you continue taking continuing professional development courses. So there's something called the CPA, the Canadian Physiotherapy Association. So once you graduate, you can become a member of that, or you can just see on their website, and they'll have a bunch of different courses, right? So you can take basically whatever you're interested in. You're not obligated to take specific ones. So say you wanted to take a course in acupuncture, by all means, go and do it. I'm actually taking an acupuncture course in January just so I can continue to increase my skill set there. I took, after school, I took a concussion course so that I could be certified to treat individuals with concussion. I took another course basically just on some of like the myths of the human body that I thought was really helpful for me as well. And in the future, I plan on taking even more courses. Right, a lot of my colleagues and classmates have all done the same. There's some other people who have kind of specialized and niched down. So one of my roommates, he took just like a course on rehabbing runners. Another one of my friends took a course on pelvic floor physiotherapy, which is definitely a growing branch of physio. And a lot of people, will just go and further specialize in some things. But yeah, does that kind of answer the question? Yeah, cool.
So we had a question come up in the chat. We have, would you recommend working as a PTA? I have a year to wait to apply as I'm missing a prereq, and with COVID, I haven't been getting much experience. I would also like to be able to be in class for PTA school. And then she also asked, how do you think PT school would have been for you if you had been doing it during COVID with online classes?
Good question. So I would definitely recommend volunteering as a PTA or working as a PTA, 100%. You'll get a lot of exposure that way. You'll be able to meet a lot of physios as well that you can pick their brains about. It'll also, make you more confident speaking with patients, understanding the flow of clinic, how the day-to-day looks like. So definitely go for that. And then the second part was about PT school and COVID. That's a great question. I honestly don't know. That would be, it'd be challenging. Like from the PT students that I've talked to, a lot of them, they've said at the beginning definitely was a challenging experience. But I think once everybody kind of settled in and got used to it, they kind of acclimated to the whole situation. I don't think they missed out on too much because they extended programs to make sure that they got their placements and all the requisite skills. But I think for me, like the way that I learned, like I definitely would have taken a hit because there was a time there when they couldn't have like a bunch of people in labs all at once. And do all those hands-on skills. So that huge time lapse without having hands-on skills and just feeling like I was a physio student, because a lot of the things about you want to feel like you're a physio student. Being in labs and classes and doing all those hands-on skills definitely makes you feel like that. So me personally, I felt like I would have taken the hit, but I think one thing that you guys should know is things are pretty much, I don't want to say the word normal, but like they're like almost back to normal in a sense that people are always going to class now. They're doing those labs, they're doing those hands-on skills, and physio school seems a little bit more regulated now that I guess things have gotten a little bit better for the COVID situation. So yeah, does that kind of answer the question, or I trail off a bit too much there? I tend to babble, so.
She said, yes, thank you. And then we have another question in the chat as well. Lauren asked, how long does PT school take? Does it depend on where you go?
Good question. So PT school is 2 to 2.5 years, depending on the program. For example, like U of A, I think is like 2.5 years. They just have that little bit extra buffer zone. But for the most part, most schools are 2 years. When I went to Queens, it was 2 years. Pretty sure all the programs in Ontario are 2 years. And then depending on where you go, does not matter. All the PT schools in Canada will teach you everything you need to know about becoming a physio. There are some schools that bias a certain area of practice over others. So, for example, if you guys ever read about if you guys ever read about Western's physio program on like forums, you'll see a lot of people say that there's a strong orthopedic focus, right? And there definitely is, because there's a lot of orthopedic physios there, I believe, in the faculty. So they'll harp on those skills a little bit more. And then, for example, U of T. U of T is like the school of hospital placements, right? There's a ton of hospitals within the downtown core. So they'll definitely zone in on those hospital skills a little bit more. But at the end of the day, it's what you make of the material that you're given, right? So it doesn't mean that somebody who goes to U of T is going to be better at hospital. Somebody who goes to Western is going to be better at orthopedic skills. It's ultimately what you make of it. And like Nate asked earlier, there's always that continuing education, that if you feel like you didn't get enough of a certain aspect within your program, you can always take courses after that will help you develop those skills. So does not matter. It's totally based on your decision. Pick a school. If you have the luxury of picking between multiple programs, pick the program that suits you best, do your research on it, and then go from there.
I have a question here. So when writing our personal statements, what are your top advices or something we should include or avoid when writing them?
For sure. So I think definitely have a plan. Just basically list out all of the reasons why you'd want to be a physio. Just ask yourself why. First, start with that why question, because when your why is strong, it's going to set the foundation for the rest of the statement, and it's going to come a lot easier, right? If you don't start with a strong why, it's going to be tough to write a good statement. I think about some anecdotes as well. Like for me, for example, like when I talked to you guys about my nonna, I wrote about that on my statement, right? I didn't write a huge paragraph about it, but I gave them a little bit of something. I gave them a little bit of that experience so that they know, okay, like this is like, this is to heart, right? This is a deep meaning why this person wants to become a physio. One thing, this is kind of like a pro tip. I would say, don't ever write like, I want to be a physio because I want to help people, right? Like that, like they see that all the time and they know you want to help people, right? Like that's why you're choosing this profession, and it's very cliche. And it doesn't have a lot of substance behind that, if you know what I mean, right? Like if you want to say that you want to help people, tell them how, right? Like how do physios help people? Because if you can tell them how physios help people, they'll see that this guy knows what he's talking about. This guy or girl knows what they're talking about. And they definitely got a deep understanding of what physio is. And then the last thing I would say is make sure that if you're talking about your experiences, tell the committee how they helped you in eventually becoming a good physiotherapist in the future, right? Like a lot of people have great resumes. I've seen people with great resumes, like so many hours and so many different positions in multiple areas of practice, physio, lots of non-PT related experience as well. But they wrote their personal statement like it was a resume. Like I was here, I did this many hours, done. But you need to take that experience to the next level and be like, this is what I learned and this is how it's going to help me in the field. So just kind of, pump that experience up a bit with relating it to the physiotherapy profession.
I think that's really valuable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. To kind of add on to that, like personal statement part, I was kind of noticing one of the sections, it's called, it asks about like, it tells you to kind of demonstrate your like knowledge of the practice and like the kind of scope of everything. Like, do you suggest like when applying, you kind of go in depth about that stuff, or you kind of still stay surface level? Because obviously you're there to learn more about the practice, but
Mm-hmm.
kind of how in depth would you go for that?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Is that like the first question on like the Queen statement, for example?
Yeah, I think Western and Queens, only those two schools have that question. But yeah, it ties into why do you want to be a physio? But it says demonstrate your knowledge of the practice. So like,
I gotcha. Yeah. So basically, with that, what you want to do is you want to be able to show that you understand the main areas of practice of that physios work in, the settings that physios work in, what physios actually do. Because I think that's one thing that people don't really lay out. And honestly, you can say that in like a sentence or two, right? It doesn't have to be like this huge, extravagant explanation of what a physio is. And then one last thing I would say is what the level of autonomy of a physio is as well. That's one thing that I think is very valuable to add. And what you want to know there is that, physios are autonomous practitioners. Like you don't need a doctor's referral to go see a physio. And I think that's important to understand because they want leaders in this field. And if you're the first person that a patient is ever going to see, you need to be a good leader and you have to be, an autonomous individual. So those are like the main, I think those 3 or 4 things that I mentioned that I think you should talk about, but don't go too far in depth in them. Just kind of give them enough information so that they know you're aware of that stuff. Does that kind of make sense? And I don't like to, talk too much about the specifics because sometimes it's hard to incorporate every single little aspect in that. And I think if I speak too much, then, everyone's going to look into all these little intricacies of the profession.
yeah,
You have to include this and this and this and this, right? So I keep it a little bit broad, if you guys know what I mean.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you.
Sure, man.
We also have a few more in the chat. Another question from Sonia was, I've been researching how to practice in the US and heard that you can transfer over by taking a test as long as you have the MSCPT. And also, have you taken any extra certifications, i.e. cardiorespiratory rehab?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So about the US. So one thing to note, it's going to vary between states with regards to your requirements. And that's how the US is, right? Certain states have different laws and rules and regulations. So if you ever are thinking about that, definitely look at that ahead of time. But basically, what you need to enter the US, like regardless of the state, is you need to pass an exam called the NPTE, which is probably what you saw when you were researching. It's called the National Physical Therapy Competency Exam. I think that's what it stands for. Which is just a written test, very similar to the competency exam that we do. I'm pretty sure there's a manual out there. I have a colleague who actually did it. So if you wanted to reach out to me, I could definitely, in the future, definitely help you out with that. And once you pass that, you're licensed as a physio in the States. But then after that, wherever you want to go, say you want to go to a specific state, you got to make sure that you meet their rules and regulations as well. And then extra certifications. So I'm taking that acupuncture course in a couple months, and then I've done the complete concussion management incorporated course, which has just made me certified to treat individuals with concussion. So those are the main 2. The reason why I haven't taken more is because during COVID, a lot of the courses basically were put on halt. So I haven't been able to take as many as I wanted to. But even then, I don't like taking too much at once because I like to, if I take a course, I want to kind of let it marinate a little bit. Let me learn that material first. Let me apply it to the field, get comfortable with that. And then now let's move on to the next one. I think a lot of physios get, especially new grad physios, get kind of out of hand with the, taking courses. It's like a course frenzy because they feel like they need to keep going with that. But for me, my whole thought was, I was in school for 6 straight years. Like I needed a brain break, right? Like I just needed to take a break from all these courses because it's a long process. Like I said, physio school is busy, stressful. It's a lot of work. And sometimes you need to give your brain a break so that you can be fresh when you do take those courses.
That's very helpful. Thank you. She also has another question here. Do you see the questions? You can see them, right?
I can see them now,
okay,
yeah.
awesome.
I would like to get into rheumatology as I also have a rheumatic disease. Should I go about it by focusing on hospital jobs or private clinic? Yeah, it's a good question. I would say that, and again, this is just from my experience, but I would say that hospital is definitely the way to go in that sense, because there's usually there's like rheumatology clinics within hospitals, rheumatology programs. And actually at Credit Valley Hospital, the hospital that I work at, there was just a job opening for an advanced care practitioner for the like an advanced care practitioner who's a physiotherapist for the rheumatology program, because the one that was there for I think like 25, 30 years retired. So there was a vacancy there. And that's where I heard of most physios with extra rheumatology certifications work, from my experience. There may be some in private clinics. I haven't seen too many, but that's where I think would be the best place to go. I'm a patient at Toronto Western, and I've been asking if they need help for years. Yeah. Yeah. And right now it's probably even harder with COVID. Like there's like no volunteers at hospitals right now. So I can totally empathize with you guys in that, because that's another question I get a lot. How do I get volunteer experience in the hospital? And honestly, right now, like you can't. Like I would totally have a volunteer in the hospital, but I like it's a no from the manager. It's a no from the organization, unfortunately. Yeah, I tried to work in a lower limb rehab clinic at William Osler, and they canceled it. Yeah, totally happened. I hear you. I feel for you guys for sure.
So
but
that kind of,
I think the key thing, sorry to cut you off there, so I think the key thing is, if you guys are like, okay, I'm strapped for experiences, just know everyone else can't get in hospital as well. Just remember that. That's all I had to say.
So yeah, that kind of goes along with the question I was going to ask is, how do you think the whole application process will differ because of COVID? It's been, I know, even finding clinical experience has been so difficult. I tried for a year and a half and only got it last summer, this past summer. And that was at the end of it. That was after searching for so long and contacting every place and being very adamant about getting in and following back with them. So it's been very difficult to find those in-person experiences. So do you think the universities will kind of understand that and know that's something they'll have to expect with these new applications?
Yeah, I think so for sure. Like if they weren't aware of that, that'd be, pretty negligent for sure. And I think if you go, I'll give you one example. Not sure if you guys have looked into University of Alberta's physio application, but they've actually completely cut the whole volunteer requirement experience requirement, right? So that just shows, okay, these schools are understanding, right? And I know there's other programs don't explicitly have it up there, but I'm hard pressed to believe that they would not consider that. I think they're going to have a little bit more of a lower standard for some of these other experiences that they typically would see in years past. And honestly, I think it's going to be like when people have experiences, it's going to be like a lot of just like clinic, because like here at the clinic, I've had volunteers, and it's because we run our own show here, right? If I want to have a volunteer, like I can have somebody in here. It's at my discretion, but when it comes to hospital, you just got to follow what the guidelines are for that. So, yeah, short answer to the question is I think they're definitely going to take that in consideration. And like I said before, just understand that, if you're like, oh, I don't have any experience here, like just understand that everyone else is in the same shoes. Except, I will say though, except for, say there's like somebody who's like 5 years out, who now wants to go to physio, like career change, like they're going to have that experience, right? So that's where I don't know, like where would they measure up, right? Because maybe they've been working in the hospital for like a couple years, but then like COVID hit, and then like they don't, like they stopped from there, or maybe they still continued on. I have no idea. But I think for the most part, most of the applicants are going to be like you guys. Like there are some mature applicants that definitely apply, but not as many as you guys who are still in undergrad right now. The physiology prereq I tried to do was during the winter 2020 semester, and McMaster doesn't accept exercise physiology anymore. Do you suggest I still apply anyways and see if they can make an exception? Or should I take a year off, get the prereq, and work as a PTA? That's a good question. Honestly, I would say, actually try and get in contact with McMaster's admissions committee. I don't want to tell you something that, maybe you like start doing all this other extra work that you didn't have to do. So I would definitely call them, email them. All that information's on their website, and see what they say, because maybe there is going to be an exception. Because I've noticed that too. Like there's like even like new for the 2022 cycle, and there's like a new course that you have to take. I'd be like, what the heck? Like I thought I already had all the prereqs, and now I got like this other one that I gotta take as well. So I think yeah, definitely look into that and ask. Figured this out a day before apps open last week, so I'm kind of bummed. Yeah, I hear you. I'd be pissed for sure. But yeah, definitely check in with them. No worries. Any other questions, guys?
Doesn't seem like it right now. Maybe we'll hang out for another minute or so, but
Yeah.
I think we did a pretty good job.
Yeah, and then yeah, let me know when you want the surprise there.
Oh yeah, let's hear it. Let's hear it. For
Okay.
sure.
All right, cool. Let me get my screen up here. Okay, see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, now we do.
All right. Shameless plug here. Okay, guys. So myself, a couple of my colleagues, we started a initiative here called physioschool.ca. You guys can go on it right now. We're still making very last minute tweaks to the website because we're launching on Monday. And this, I say shameless plug because I think this is everything that you guys are definitely looking for with regards to applying to PT school. We have blogs, we have articles, we have podcasts that basically answer a lot of these questions that you guys have. And this is something that we've been working on for like the better half, like a year and a half for sure, all behind the scenes, that, we wanted to put together because with Canadian Physio Student, love doing that, but I knew I wanted to take it a step further, and physioschool.ca is definitely that step further that can definitely help you guys with these applications. We're really, really excited for them. We also have courses that help out with applications, interviews, making sure that you're prepared for both of those. And yeah, there's just a lot of good information on there that if you guys want to check them out, definitely go on there. Like even Simona, like when you asked about personal statement tips, I literally have a blog on there called Personal Statement Tips. So, you can go on there, definitely check all that out. I think you guys would really enjoy it. And we're just going to keep adding to it as we go. We're going to have an Instagram page. We've got a YouTube channel, podcast called the Physio School Podcast. If you guys want to look that up, you can listen to the first episode we have up there. We're going to be doing some interviews with students from all of the different programs in Canada. We'll get people on there to give tips on interviews, application tips, physios, like actual physios in the field in various different areas of practice. So, cardio refs physio, neuro physio, sport PT, everything that you can imagine, we're going to get on there. All right. But yeah, thanks so much, guys.
That's awesome. Super thankful for that. Like, I'm sure it was not as easy. You didn't have as much as many resources when you were applying as we do now. There's so much out there, and that's only going to add to everything. That's awesome. Thank you.
Totally, man. Yeah. Like I said, guys, I love doing this stuff. I love helping people out like you guys. So, yeah, let me know what you think.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. That is so great to hear, and I'm sure it will be very helpful for us. We have a bunch of students here that are in their first year even, and all the way up to their fourth year. So getting this information now is super helpful for sure.
Definitely.
All right. Well, I think that is it for today. If anyone has, I don't know if you got to get going, any last quick questions? Otherwise, we'll probably wrap it up.
Where can they find the recording? Are we gonna post that or?
Yeah, we'll most likely post it. I'm not 100% where on that yet, so I'll get back to them.
Most likely we'll put a link on our Instagram though.
Yeah, something like
at
that.
Least
yeah,
have it out that way, but
that's most likely. So look out for that, Lauren, if you're not already following our Instagram account, UN Pre-PT. All the information should be there. But yeah. Perfect.
All right. Well, that looks like it's it. So, Anthony, thank you again. Thank you so much for joining. Super, super helpful today. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this. And yeah, we appreciate you.
No worries. You guys are well ahead of the game if you're already thinking about all this. So you guys put yourself in a good position. I think it's super cool that you guys started this out. Thanks again for having me on. And yeah, if you guys need anything, just reach out to me.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.